Hello, and welcome back to What We Have in Common. I'm Darren Hamilton. Let me ask you a simple question. How many government forms should you have to complete before you're allowed to earn an honest living? 1, 5, 20? Would you like that answer in triplicate? Because one of the strangest things about modern government is how often it behaves like an overprotective parent dealing with a 38-year-old adult. You know the type, can I start a business? Did you fill out the paperwork? Can I offer a service? Did you get the permit? Can I earn money doing something that people will voluntarily pay me for? Whoa, 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 let's not do anything reckless. We're only talking about your livelihood. Now, before somebody accuses me of wanting complete chaos, let's establish something. There are occupations that absolutely require meaningful oversight. I would prefer my surgeon to know what he's doing. I would like airline mechanics to receive training. And I remain deeply committed to the principle that bridges should not collapse. Admittedly, these are pretty low standards, but I stand by them. The question isn't whether some standards are necessary. The question is why government increasingly acts as though every occupation presents the same level of danger as handling nuclear materials while skydiving. Because somewhere along the way, America developed a fascinating habit. We stopped asking, does this person have a willing customer, and started asking, has this person received sufficient bureaucratic blessings? And those are not the same thing at all. Now, Republicans and Libertarians often agree on something important here. People should be able to work. People should be able to start a business. People should be able to support themselves without spending half of their lives asking permission from institutions that have never met them. That seems reasonable. In fact, it sounds like the kind of thing Americans used to celebrate. The entrepreneur, the self-starter, the person willing to take the risk, the person willing to build something, the person willing to bet on themselves. That's basically half of Texas mythology. The other half involves barbecue and telling Californians that they're doing it wrong. Yet somehow we've built systems that often treat entrepreneurship like suspicious behavior. Republicans often talk about entrepreneurship, small business, and self-reliance. Libertarians ask the follow-up question. If you truly trust the people to build their own lives, why do they need permission before they can even begin? You want to braid hair? Permission. You want to open a small business? Permission. You want to renovate a property? Permission. You want to put up a sign? Permission. You want to sell something? Permission. You want to make a living? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're going to need some paperwork. Now, as an autistic Marine vet, I've developed a unique relationship with bureaucracy. I notice patterns. And one pattern that I've noticed is that government doesn't remove forms. Government creates forms. Government expands forms. Government reproduces forms. If paperwork were a species, it would be kudzu. Somewhere in America right now, a filing cabinet is having grandchildren. And here's what fascinates me. Every permit, every license, every requirement, every approval process usually sounds reasonable by itself. That's how bureaucracy survives. Nobody creates a rule and says this will be expensive, confusing, and mostly benefit existing competitors. No. Every rule arrives wearing a cape and playing a John Williams backing track. It's always about safety, consumer protection, professional standards, quality assurance. The language is impeccable. The outcomes, often less so, because regulations have a funny tendency to accumulate, like barnacles or streaming subscriptions. 1 isn't a problem. 10 starts getting expensive. 50 becomes ridiculous, and eventually nobody remembers why half of them even exist. At which point they become just another part of the scenery, the political equivalent of a treadmill used as a clothes rack. And who gets hurt the most? Not the giant corporations, never the giant corporations. Large companies love regulatory complexity. They have lawyers, compliance departments, government affairs offices, entire teams devoted to navigating the bureaucracy. The people who get crushed are the people trying to break in. The newcomer, the entrepreneur, the tradesman, the independent contractor, the person trying to turn a skill into a livelihood. In other words, the exact people that politicians claim to admire, but end up regulating into obscurity. Funny how that works. Now, imagine opening a lemonade stand. Now, imagine your competitor owns every lemonade stand in town. And then imagine that your competitor helps to write the rules governing lemonade stands. Congratulations, you now understand a surprising amount of modern regulation, because barriers don't always protect consumers. Sometimes they protect the incumbents. And that's where libertarians part company with a lot of politicians. When politicians see a problem, their first instinct is often, let's create a rule. Libertarians tend to ask, what's the cost of that rule? Not just the financial cost, the opportunity cost, the innovation cost, the entrepreneurship cost, the freedom cost. How many businesses never start? How many workers never enter a profession? How many dreams quietly die in a pile of forms that nobody will ever read? Because every barrier filters people out. And it's not always the people you intended. Now, to be clear, this is not an argument for anarchy. This is an argument for humility. Government is very good at creating barriers. It's much less effective at predicting which barriers are actually necessary. And that distinction matters because Republicans and Libertarians generally agree on the goal. People should have the freedom to work. People should have the freedom to build. People should have the freedom to compete. The disagreement often comes down to whether we're willing to examine the barriers we've already created. Because every regulation, every permit, every licensing requirement has its defenders. And nobody wants to admit that their favorite rule might not be accomplishing what they think. But a healthy system should be willing to ask questions. Is this requirement actually protecting people? Is it solving a real problem? Is it worth the cost, or has it just become another obstacle standing between ordinary people and opportunity? Because freedom isn't merely the absence of government. Freedom is the ability to act, to build, to create, to work, to take risks, to succeed, and to fail, and try again. And the more permission slips we require before people can do those things, the less free society becomes. Not all at once, not dramatically, just one form at a time, one permit at a time, one approval at a time, until eventually people stop asking whether government should be involved and start asking how many signatures they'll need. And that's a question Texans should never get comfortable asking. Because the spirit that built this state was, let me show you what I can do, not please direct me to the appropriate licensing authority. And government should be very careful not to stand in the way of that.